everyone, and welcome once again to Chocolate Chat, presented by The Persistent Rumor. My name is Chocolate Yoda, spelled Y-O-D-D-A-H, because film studios are litigious. And today, I have a lifelong buddy with me. So lifelong, I don't even know exactly when we met, but we'll figure that out together. And please, Joe Chinnici, introduce yourself to the world.
Hello.
Hello, world.
I'm so self-conscious of these ever since you said side effects might be large glasses.
Giant glasses, yeah.
Hey, man. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
I believe we met in 7th grade.
Junior high school, yeah. First year of junior high school. So that means we've known each other 44 years.
Yeah, man.
That's fucking insane.
It is. It is. And yeah, we started out as amazing friends. I remember we became fast friends.
Yeah.
And stupidly, due to outside forces, that friendship kind of dwindled. And then thankfully, thanks to social media, we reconnected.
Yeah. Facebook put us back together. What life could not tear asunder.
That's right.
Yeah. So I wanted to interview you because I mean we haven't spoken in a while. The last time we spoke, I think it was shortly after your father died, you know, we're constantly in communication on Facebook, but we only spoke on the phone, you know, once, you know, however long ago that was. And, you know, I this way I can see you, at least virtually. And also really because I just think you're an incredibly interesting person. Your brother recently put up that photo of the 50-year-old guitar that you have.
Yeah.
Right? And I was looking at it, and when he was describing the timeline, I said, I think that's the first electric guitar I ever touched.
Hang on, I have to unplug in order to go grab it, and I hope you don't see my ass because I'm wearing sweats, but...
Oh, God.
There it is. Give me a second to plug my headset back in.
Sure.
Yeah, man. I got this in 76, and I had butchered the hell out of it. I added the third pickup, I put in Fender-style switches and all this crazy shit, and when Sidetrack did our reunion, I decided, being that I still had my original amplifier and everything, I decided I had to restore it back to originals, so I couldn't cover up this hole, so I put a bandage on it.
Wow, that's a beaut. And is that a Gibson?
No, it's an Ibanez.
Ibanez, okay.
Ibanez got sued for making a Les Paul copy so perfectly that this was the next model they did. They put on the mandolin headstock so that it could no longer be considered exactly like a Les Paul. So this was that next model.
Yeah, but the body certainly looks like a Les Paul, right?
Right, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a beaut. Yeah. I remember I was fascinated because I had never touched an electric guitar before, and you know, I think I had taken like 5 guitar lessons in school and had no idea how to play the thing. But you know, it was certainly always a pleasure to listen to you play it. And so, how long have you been a musician?
I guess my whole life. I mean, I started taking guitar lessons when I was 7.
Wow.
Before that, I wanted to be a drummer. There are pictures of me in our backyard when I was like 3 years old, playing like an igloo orange, you know, where your father kept his beer.
Yeah.
And like just pounding on it. And I used to like set up Tupperwares, but my parents wouldn't allow it because drums were too loud.
Right.
So I think they thought
I wound up being a drummer.
But,
yeah, I wound up being a drummer, and my mother couldn't stand it. I had a window. After school, if I rushed home, I had a couple hours before my mother got home and flicked the lights in the basement, and that's when I knew I had to stop.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
they
So that's kind of Eddie Van Halen, though, isn't it? Like he started off as a drummer as well, and then switched to guitar,
right.
and Alex took up the drums. So
That's
that's kind
right.
of interesting. I didn't know you did drums first, but it turns out that you're a multi instrumentalist, right?
Yes,
You
but
play
just so
just
you
about
know,
everything.
I didn't start on drums first. That's what I wanted to do,
Oh,
but they just wouldn't allow it.
gotcha,
I didn't actually start playing drums until 10th grade.
gotcha.
But yeah. So yeah, I'm a guitarist. That's what I do.
Right.
But I play some drums. I play bass. I play keyboards. I noodle with the other instruments. I guess
Gotcha.
good enough to get by, but
Yeah.
I'm a guitarist. Yeah.
And a singer and a songwriter. You described your voice once as bombastic, and I don't disagree.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, the only
As a
time
matter
I,
of fact, when I told my lady that I was interviewing you, I went to YouTube and played her "Do You Feel Like I Do,"
oh, cool.
which I absolutely love your rendition of that song.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
just you and your band are fucking spectacular on that song.
Thank you.
You know, I love all your music. Your songwriting is excellent. You of course, as a musician, I think you only have peers. You probably don't have people that anyone would consider better.
I would argue that, but I appreciate it.
Well, I don't care what you think about it. I'm telling you. No, but I am so fortunate that I after we reconnected on Facebook that I got to see you play live several times, and it was always a blast.
That's cool.
So when did the band come around? And I assume there's been several bands.
Yeah, there was Sidetrack in the high school days, and then after high school, when I decided that I was absolutely going to be a rock star, I started Pipe Dreams, and that went, whatever it was, 13 years with probably 3 or 4 different incarnations, and then after that, I went pretty much solo. And since I've been solo, writing my own music, releasing my own records, and so on, there's never really been a band. My first tour, I just did acoustic with another person, Rick Giuliano, and then I did a 3-piece, and then as the budget increased with each tour, then I did a 4-piece, and then I stopped touring and had 5-piece for a little while. But and now it's just because of where I live, and it's not possible to have a set band that always rehearses and so on and so forth. It's just kind of a group of musicians, and whoever's available, we get together and do the gig. And usually we just pick out the songs and then go to the gig and play them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. And I'm sure COVID has changed all that. But while you were going strong with that, as I recall, you were also a sound engineer.
Yeah. My career in the late 80s was I was a recording engineer / producer. Thank you, my love. I got my coffee.
Oh, Cindy's great.
Yes, she is. And I recorded a band called The Silos, and they got signed to a major label, and I ended up going on tour with them as their sound man. And I very quickly figured out that when it comes to sound, whether it be being an engineer or whatever in the studio, or for some reason live sound really works for me. I find it very easy. And so I started doing sound as a substitute for the Fab Four in 2003, I think it was. And we've been together since. I've been their front of house sound man since. And of course, everything came to a screeching halt last year.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's a Broadway production?
No. The Fab Four is considered to be this not by me, by Rolling Stone magazine and everybody else, including Giles Martin and so many others. They are considered to be the best Beatle band in the world.
Wow.
And I wouldn't argue that. After doing this with them for whatever it is now, 18 years, I'm still blown away by it every single show that we do.
That's wild.
It's astounding.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had your preference, would it be sound or playing music?
Oh my God. There's not even a question. Call me a musician.
Yeah.
Sound man is my job.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I love doing sound, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong,
yeah.
but I love doing my job, right?
Sure.
But
Sure.
my passion has always been playing. Always.
Yeah. Well, it shows. I mean, your songwriting, I think, is very interesting. You did a song live once that was about a woman that had been murdered, and I sort of remember vaguely that you knew her.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't typically talk about my day job when I'm talking about music, but my day job is I work for Harman/JBL speaker company. I've been with them for, actually this past Monday was my 28-year anniversary with them.
Wow.
But, there was a woman in the California office, her name was Terry Duran. She was the recone specialist / trainer, and her husband murdered her, and freaked me out. It completely freaked me out. So as you might know, I'm doing this thing 12 months, 20 years later.
Yes.
She was murdered in, I want to say the end of May. I want to say it was the end of May. It may have been the end of June in 2001 when I was writing and recording 12 months. So I had to write a song, and for that month, it was part of the project. And no matter what I wrote, all I could think about was her, so I ended up writing The Suitcase.
Yeah. So I'm fascinated by that process. I always have been. I love lyrics. I'm a fan of Billy Joel's, and it's because of his lyrics. And I'm particularly fascinated by how artists take trauma and turn it into something beautiful. And I mean, this is a traumatic thing that you're describing. This person that you knew was murdered by her husband and stuffed in a suitcase, and you took that feeling that you had and somehow turned it into a song. How the fuck does that happen?
Well, I need to clarify something. He didn't actually stick her in a suitcase. He murdered her by rear-ended her in a residential area, and when she got out of the car, he jumped out of his car behind her, actually van, and he ran up to her and he stabbed her, and then he got back in. People pulled her off to the side of the road, and he got back in his van and he rode over her twice.
Oh my God!
And so the song that I wrote is not the story of her. It's an homage to her, so to speak.
Gotcha.
I ended up writing a very dark humor, whatever you want to call it, dark humor song about a guy killing his woman. Things like when I set her down, I'm gonna bury her by the tree, and when I set her down, I'll grab her by the toe, then I'll grab her by the hand, and then by her torso. So obviously I've cut her up, right?
Yeah.
So like things like that. So it sounds so morbid and ridiculous, but when you know the story and know where it came from,
Right.
it's not a terrible. It's a terrible story, but where the song came from was not me just having these horrible visions of wanting to kill people. That's not me, right? But yeah, I had to get it out. I had to.
So this was your process of catharsis, was taking this trauma and filtering it through your passion, which
Right.
is music, and somehow creating something that is just amazing to listen to. So I'm just fascinated by that. Like the first time that kind of process came to my attention was when Billy Joel got divorced. And we got Nylon Curtain, which is my favorite album of his, and I found out just a few years ago that it's his favorite album of his also. And because it doesn't sound like any one of his other albums, and it was
Right.
just so dark and Beatlesque in some spots. And I'm talking, post-drugs Beatles.
Right. Right.
And, to be able to take, the woman who he wrote I Love You Just the Way You Are for, they wind up divorcing. And then he writes this other album where he just pours his heart and his pain into it, and it shows. And so I was kind of disappointed, to be honest. This is dark and selfish of me. When he divorced Christy Lee, I thought, oh, we're going to get some great fucking music now. And all we got was the best of. I was pissed.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. But that's the first time I noticed it. And then, and it was years later that I heard you tell that story on stage, and then heard you play the song about it, and I was like, wow, that's just amazing to me.
Amazingly, in all the touring that I did, that was the most requested song. People would request.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah,
I could see that. Yeah,
that was the song
Very,
that
very
I thought, oh my God, all right, fine. I wrote it. I recorded it. I'm never going to play it in a bar because people are going to want to take out the razor blades. They're all drunk. And they're just going to be like, oh, this is terrible. But, it worked.
I have a feeling that has to do with sort of paradoxically the lowered inhibitions that people have when they're at a bar. And that's when they'll allow themselves to feel those kind of emotions.
You're probably right. That makes perfect sense.
In vino veritas, that whole thing. I very quickly, I know this woman who is just miserable all the time, except when she's drunk. And then she's the happiest person. And so I thought to myself, oh, wait a second. Normally people lose their facade when they get drunk. So she's pretending to be miserable when she's sober. And she's hiding a really happy person underneath all that. It's the weirdest shit I've ever seen.
Or maybe she just can't let go of all that anger until she gets some alcohol in her.
Yeah. Either way, it sucks, man.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
got to suck to be her. But if I were her, I'd be just drunk all the time.
Right. But it's kind of true, If I meet somebody and they get trashed and they turn into this complete asshole, a lot of time people say, well, but that's not him. He's drunk. And my thought process is, no, that is him.
That's the real him.
That's the real person, right? You just got to see the real person.
I agree 100%. That's why I don't forgive people when they say, oh, I said it because I was angry. I'm like, yeah, that means you were telling the truth.
Right.
That's how you really felt. So you're a bullshitter when you're not angry, and when you're angry, you let it fly. Yeah, that's interesting. So you brought up something earlier, and I had said that if you wanted to talk about this, I think it would be really, really interesting. Just because it's a side of me that people don't know so far. I've kind of alluded to my past, but never really got into it. And you were part of a story that I didn't know was happening until 30 years later.
Right.
So why don't you pick it up from there?
Yeah. I feel like when you're growing up, man, you got your parents, right? And your parents are going to teach you some really wonderful, amazing things. But they're also going to teach you the wrong things sometimes. And it's up to you as an individual to figure out later on what's right and what's wrong. And you either repeat the mistakes or you hope to do better and learn from those mistakes, so that you take all the good things they taught you and you keep those, and then maybe you even improve on the bad things they taught you. And in this case, I met you, and all I know is I met you and you had this giant smile And we started talking, and we were instantly connected. We were friends. I mean, and then one day I brought you home after school. I didn't think twice about it, right? There's nothing to think about. My friend, I asked him to come over. He came over. And we're hanging out. We're playing. We're doing whatever we're doing. We're in the basement listening to music, playing guitar, whatever it was. And my dad comes home from work. My mom goes to pick up my dad at the train station at 5:30, comes home, and it's time to eat dinner. And I had asked you to stay for dinner. And I had asked my mom if you could stay for dinner. And she said, well, sure, let's see what Dad says, but sure, whatever. And Dad came home and said something to the effect of, oh, we can't, I'm sorry, we have something to do, whatever. And, Martha, drive Joey's friends home. And we drove you home. And when I got home, I got read the riot act. You can't come to the house anymore. How dare I do that? What are the neighbors going to say? And I just didn't get it. I truly didn't get it.
Right.
I didn't understand. And so with that, I was pretty much told I wasn't allowed to be your friend.
Right, right.
So,
and to give it a little bit of context, just geographically, this was Valley Stream, Long Island. I moved to Valley Stream. Well, I moved to Malvern, right next to Valley Stream.
Right.
And where my mother's house was
cul-de-sac,
2 blocks. Right? Say again?
A cul-de-sac, right?
Yes. And right 2 blocks away was the Malvern school zone, but I was 2 blocks over that. And back then you had to go to the school that you were zoned for. So I wound up in the Valley Stream school system. And ironically, Malvern was the first integrated school on Long Island. And
Valley Stream was 100% white.
Yeah, pretty much. And we moved there in 73, and I believe it was either 70 or 71 that they had the cross burning in Rosedale.
Oh, God.
Right? So we got there right after some pretty stressful shit was going on. And my stepfather was white, and my mother is Dominican and sort of light-skinned brown. So, whatever, that was my life. And so here I was in this all white school after spending the first 9 years of my life in a totally mixed environment. Now suddenly I was the lone pepper in a sea of salt, right? I didn't think anything of it because, like you, that wasn't part of my consciousness. I was just like, okay, whatever, this is where I am now. It's weird. There's a lot of fucking trees around. The only place I knew of trees was Central Park or up Cabrini Boulevard or something uptown. But, this was, it didn't faze me in terms of a racial thing.
Right.
It was just a different looking kind of environment. But luckily I was fairly popular. I made friends easily. And so I never knew that happened because 12th grade was kind of when I first started experiencing racism hardcore. It happened because in grade school everyone was pretty much cool with me. I don't remember one incident.
Right.
So from 9 to age 12 or so, nothing was really going on. And then junior high comes, and I was fairly tall for my age, and as a matter of fact, in grade school, I was the tallest child in the entire school. Yeah, and then, so I was, I show up, and I guess because I was, people probably thought I was older. I had white people coming out of their house to scream nigger at me, and they did it while they were driving by, and
so proud of themselves for it.
Oh, I'm sure. And the weird thing was that even though it was kind of sporadic. I don't really remember it until I hit about puberty. So 12, 13 years old, and suddenly it really ratcheted up. And I couldn't contextualize it because I had never experienced anything like that. And my mother and stepfather never talked to me about it once, ever. Right? So my 12-year-old brain is trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. And here's what was confusing. Like, now I know black and Hispanic, there really is no difference. Quite honestly, and it sounds like a joke, but it's literal. It just matters where the boat dropped you off. That's where the differences come from.
Yeah.
Right? We're all the same. But back then, I thought of myself as Dominican, and I thought black people were different from Dominicans. So when white people were calling me nigger,
You're going,
I was
you're
like,
getting it
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, but I said, what did black people do to white people to make them so mad at me? It was so weird. But that's just the overall context of this. So that's the paradigm that your father lived in,
Yeah.
right? And obviously he was older, so he came from a generation where that was not even. For him to speak like that, he didn't even have to look over both shoulders.
Right.
That was the world he lived in. He was perfectly comfortable saying that to you,
and felt that I should understand it.
and yeah. And did he ever give you any kind of explanation about it?
No.
Okay.
That was it. It was,
Right.
What are the neighbors going to say?
Right.
But
right.
that was always the case, right? 20 years later, I stayed there overnight when in between two shows, because I now live a couple hundred miles away, and I had to wake up in the morning and move my car for my neighbor, and I ran out of the house at 7 o'clock in the morning with my PJs on just so I could move my car, and my dad was like, "What the hell are you doing? What the neighbors are going to see that." I'm like, "So? Like, I'm in my PJs. I'm not naked." Like,
Right.
everything was always, what are the neighbors going to say? But so
Gotcha.
So that statement to me, what are the neighbors going to say, didn't strike any kind of weird chord. Like, what are you talking about? Because I heard that all the time. I heard it if I played a record too loud, and, whatever, which is probably why I live in the mountains, because I don't ever want to hear that. But yeah, so I just, whatever. Okay, I guess I can't be his friend.
Right. So what was that like for you? Like, what, and I want to skip to the end also, to kind of explore if you ever dealt with that with your father, or was there ever a ribbon tied around it and kind of finished it up?
No, to be honest, my dad and I did not have a great relationship. I'm really happy to say that I closed it out in what I feel is a very good way. He was dying of a pulmonary thing. He was basically suffocating. His lungs had lost elasticity, and it got to the point where he couldn't really do anything for himself anymore, and my mother and my sister couldn't do it. So being that my day job allows for it, I basically just moved in with him. I left Cindy at home, and I drove down to the island, and I stayed at their house and worked from their house and took care of him for the last couple of months he was alive. I remember as I was packing up one night, because I came home for a couple of weekends or whatever, and as I was going down, Cindy had said to me, this could be a really good thing. Maybe you guys could finally have that talk and kind of get some things cleared up. And I said to her, I said, there's no way that's ever going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's not who he is. He wouldn't have a conversation. I'm all about conversation. I don't want to leave anything up to, someone's imagination. I want to get it all out there on the table. So I knew it wouldn't happen, and it didn't. But it was okay, because it actually kind of got to the point toward the end there where the only person he wanted around him was me. I was the only person he trusted to help him to stand up, to get him to the bathroom, to do things, so without ever actually having the words, we left off in a good place.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but unfortunately we never addressed this. As a matter of fact, the night that I saw you for the first time after reconnecting through social media, he was there as well. It was
Yeah, I
very rare
remember.
that my parents came to shows, and for whatever reason, he was there and you were there, and I thought that was so amazing.
Yeah,
And so there I was. I pulled you outside, and I finally got to explain to you what had happened and how terrible I felt, because I did. I felt
yeah,
horrible that I
yeah,
couldn't be your friend for all those years,
yeah,
and it was so weird that he was inside, like,
yeah.
but
Yeah, I remember that vividly.
yeah,
Because again, this was a story that I was part of that I didn't know I was part of,
right,
right? Because it's not like you made any declarations to me or whatever. I just, you know, because I was floating around a lot in school. I like to be friends with all the various groups that were there. So I was friends with the potheads. I was friends with the athletes because I was an athlete. I was friends with the nerds because I spoke their language. And, you know, I sort of floated in and out of a lot of different groups. And I'll be honest, I always remember, you know, in class, I would laugh at things that you would say because you were fun. I still literally remember a song parody you did out of nowhere. I think it was social studies class because the country Bangladesh came up and you started singing Bangladesh. You got the sweetest little Bangladesh. And for fucking 40 some odd years later, I still remember that shit.
my sister just did that to me. Oh my God. Last year we were somewhere together, and my sister suddenly goes, "Life is like a bowl of mashed potatoes," and I was like, "What are you talking about?" She said she used to sing that all the time, and I had no
There
idea.
you go. That's great. Yeah. So because I saw you in class, because we said hello when we passed each other in the halls,
Absolutely,
I didn't know anything had
you
changed.
just thought we kind of grew apart,
Yeah, I just, you know,
right?
he went that way, I went this way. Because I was busy as fuck all the time. Like
Sure,
I had soccer for the first 3 months of school, then I had basketball for the next 3 months, and then for 6 months after that, it was martial arts. So I was on roller skates every single day of the
sure,
year, you know, and you know, again, I'd see you out and about. So and we were always friendly. You were always, you know, just
absolutely.
a wonderful, smiley guy and all that shit. So I just really didn't know what was going on. And so when you told me that story at the show, I just felt terrible for you.
Oh,
You know, I just
thank you,
felt
but
so
that's not
terrible
why I
for you.
told you.
No, no, but I'm glad you told me because I had my perspective of racism,
Right,
but I didn't have that perspective of it.
right,
You know, for a while, even though I never thought of myself as a victim, I thought I was the only one affected by it. And you know, and the reason why I think it's important to share a story like that is because you know, racism to me is one of the dumbest fucking things in the world. And it's like a plague. And it's not a black and white thing because people that are the same color hate each other. You know, the Irish were killing each other in the 80s.
absolutely.
You know, Rwanda, Sunnis and Shias. These are all the same people.
Yep,
You know, and so it's just one of those things where the other is falsely created and
yep,
then judged to be inferior, and now we got to kill each other.
right, right. And it just seems to me that, you either have people that are racist and proud of it, or you have the people, and I think many of the people that we grew up with, um, they're racist and they don't even realize it.
Yeah,
They have no clue. Like, the statements they make are so obvious, but they just they just don't see it.
I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow your fucking mind. So a few years ago, I wound up cutting a lot of our alumni out of my Facebook friend group, friend
As did
pile, you
I.
know. And this was why, at a certain point when the subject came up, because it's like look, I get it. You white folks want to talk about what racism is, but I have a different perspective that I can share with you. And I was told that my perspective was wrong.
And
I
there
was
you have.
literally told, literally, you couldn't have experienced racism. You were so popular.
Oh my God, that's
So they're
unbelievable.
telling me, here I am saying, yes, I experienced racism during this time. And they were like, no, 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 you didn't.
Wow,
It's absurd.
it's
I was
incredible.
bewildered. I
It's
was
incredible
absolutely.
how.
I remember looking at the screen, going, "What the fuck is this person telling me that I don't remember my experience of racism correctly, and they think they do?"
Wow, that's amazing. Some of them are so self unaware. They
Yeah,
just they can't see it. It's depressing.
yeah.
I did
I
the
was
same thing.
told. I was told by one woman. I won't name her, but she she was one because I speak very frankly about America,
Right,
because I'm not here by choice. I'm an immigrant,
right.
and I have a different perspective of it, and I share my perspective very boldly, and I don't care who sees it.
Right.
And one woman said to me, "Well, if you don't like it so much, why don't you leave?" And I said, "That's interesting. You know who thought differently about that? The forefathers of America.
Right. Right.
They were
Exactly.
like, if we don't like it, let's improve it.
Right.
And the only way to improve something you don't like is to acknowledge what it is that you don't like to begin with.
Yep.
But it was so brazen, just like, oh yeah, you can't say anything bad about America because America's perfect.
And most of the people that feel that way have never left America,
Yeah,
and probably even haven't left their own town, other than the city near them. You
right.
know, I mean, when I started traveling, that's when I kind of woke up.
Yeah. And
And
you've been like, I think I saw you were in like Singapore or something one time, or
oh, I travel quite a bit. I spend a lot of time in Manila.
Manila. Yeah.
I've been to India several times, and Denmark and Amsterdam, and a bunch of places. And I'm sorry to say, in most cases they're better over there.
Hmm.
I'm not saying overall better.
Yeah.
I'm saying certain things
Right.
are better,
Yeah.
and it's a shame when people are ignorant enough to just decide that everything here is better because that's where we are and no one else could possibly be as good as we are. Like
Right.
that's just it's so arrogant.
Yeah. George Bernard Shaw had a quote about that. He said, "Patriotism is the belief that your country is superior to all others simply because you were born there."
Right. Exactly. That's
And
exactly right.
especially people who have not traveled, because it was Twain who talked about how travel is the antithesis of prejudice. It's
Right.
it's it's the thing that will kill prejudice, and you're echoing that idea.
But you have to be open to it, right?
Yeah.
The first time I went to India, and don't get me wrong, man, we got off the plane, we got into a car, and the first thing we saw when we left the airport was a little child run out into the middle of the sidewalk where there was a tree coming out of the sidewalk, and he squatted down and he crapped. And then he got back up and he ran back to his friends and kept playing. Freaked us out. But half of us were like, "Oh my God, I can't stay here. This is my health. I have to go home." And they got on a plane and went home,
Mm.
right? I was completely open to the experience. I wanted to learn. Another set came as while I was there, and this was for my job. And they completely kept to themselves. They went to Domino's or McDonald's every day for lunch. They wouldn't try any of the food. They wouldn't do anything because it's not healthy. It's not safe.
Right.
So, like, they traveled, but they didn't experience anything.
Yeah.
You have to be open to checking out new cultures and different things in order to start to figure out that what we have here is not necessarily the best.
Yeah. I never understood the point of traveling to a different country only to recreate everything you have in America.
But you know what? They do that here too. Every person from Long Island comes up here, buys a house, and the first thing they do is put up a big fence and cement the yard.
Oh, God.
And it's like, what are you doing? You came up here to get away, and you're doing exactly the same thing.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are funny that way. Yeah, I haven't dealt with overt racism in a long time. I got a pretty severe resting bitch face. I don't really look like the guy that you want to bother. And that's by accident. I'm happy most of the time, but if I'm just chilling out, I just look ornery.
Right. That's it.
And I'm a big guy. I'm a martial artist. I'm a power lifter, so I just don't look like the guy that you should bother. So it's always interesting to kind of observe what's going on in America, what's going on in the world. Last summer was the first time that I saw the world respond to America's racism. Had never seen that before. Had never seen all 50 states have protests at the same time. 80 different countries we were all protesting the same thing. And the foundation of what motivated those protests was racism, and how amazing that, we just got resolution to that one case. It's only one case, but we have to stop and sort of appreciate it for what it is. It's the first time in Minnesota's entire history that a police officer was convicted of killing a black person.
I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody. Cindy and I were in the car when the verdict came in, and I busted into tears. I did.
I understand.
It hit me. It made me so happy to know that there is some change happening.
I hope so. I hope this is the beginning of a new direction for America. You got to give credit where credit is due. I'm very critical of America because I've never been a joiner. George Carlin used to say that he never felt that he belonged to any group that he was a part of. And the first time I heard him say that, it put so much context to my life, because I was born in the Dominican Republic, but I don't have a Dominican flag that I'm waving. I don't stand at the Dominican Day Parade. I don't care about that. That's just where my parents were when my father impregnated my mother. That had nothing to do with me. I didn't choose to come to America. That had nothing to do with me. So I have no national pride in any nation because I had nothing to do with that stuff. I'm only proud of the things that I actually do.
Right.
So with regard to America, all this nationalism, all this pride, all this propaganda, I never bought into it because I could always see that what they were talking about in school about the home of the free, land of the brave, all that stuff, land of the brave, whichever way it goes, I was like, yeah, I don't see that. Right. I don't see that anywhere.
Right.
Because it's like, oh, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, except the niggers we own, of course, and women.
Exactly.
Dave Chappelle told a great joke about how, the forefathers were writing the Constitution, and they get to the part about freedom, and they stop. It's like, nigger, make me a sandwich or I'll kill you.
Now back to the...
Yeah. Now, where were we about freedom? Yeah, It's just one of the great ironies. And look, the forefathers deserve credit for a massive undertaking, for wanting something that didn't exist and attempting to create it, but they were flawed human beings.
Yep.
And some of them made their money from slave labor.
Yep.
And so I just...
It needs to be worked on.
Yeah, I just could never reconcile the propaganda with the reality of the history. And then the older I got and the more history I learned, especially outside of school, when you get the real shit,
Right.
then it's like, oh, yeah, yeah, this is all horse shit.
I'm not gonna. You know how you said you won't mention the name. I'm not gonna do it either. But one of our old high school buddies, so to speak, claims to be a Civil War expert, and like no matter what anyone said, his defense was the Civil War was not about slavery. Slavery was on its last leg. It was going to end no matter what. The Civil War had nothing to do with that. And no matter what anybody would say to this guy, this is what he has decided is the truth. And so
Yeah.
we're no longer friends on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah. There's a great line in the film A Fish Called Wanda. Kevin Kline's character is kind of a dumb guy that thinks he's a smart guy.
Right.
And Wanda, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, basically is insulting his intelligence. And he's like, she said something like, you're like a monkey. And he goes, monkeys don't read Nietzsche. And she says, yes, they do. They just don't understand it. So this guy read about the Civil War, but he clearly didn't understand it.
Being that you said that, you made me think of something. When Obama became president, I was thrilled. I loved Obama. I just,
Yeah, that shook me. That shook me.
yeah, and again, I wasn't thinking about the whole black-white thing. I just thought he was great. And
Yeah.
I was at a family gathering, and a friend of the family was there. And this was a couple of years into, actually, it may have been more than 4 years. It may have even been into the second term. I'm not sure now. But it was during the presidency. And again, because I really didn't follow politics until this fucking asshole. But I was at this gathering, and this guy was yammering away, talking about some politics, and just turned around and said something to the effect of, anything's got to be better than the monkey we got in there now. And I was done. I walked away.
Yeah.
Not going to say a word. It's just not worth it because nothing will come of it.
Yeah.
The only thing that would come of it would be a fight, and that's not.
Yeah,
Gonna
you
come.
can't address illogic with logic.
Right. But I walked away, and I realized, holy shit, this is where we're at. Like this is, no, none of those people that felt that way about him ever would, even if they weren't watching, the propaganda network. I don't even want to give them the credit of saying their name. Even if those people weren't watching that, they were just never going to see anything he did as good, no matter what it was.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the fuel was fed by the propaganda bullshit. But
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, it's true. It's an interesting world we live in. I'm hoping that the dinosaurs will die off and make room for a new species. The only trouble is that racists teach their children racism, and so that's why it just never goes away. But I'm hoping that even though I might not see it happen, that it just kind of dies off as because right now even though it's clear that it's happening. I'm hoping that it becomes sort of vestigial and just fades away through successive generations. And, whether it happens or not, look, I thought I would never see a black president, so I know I can be wrong about what I think can and can't happen. So, we'll see what goes on there. But I'm so happy that you were willing to discuss that part of our history. I think you're a wonderful human being. You're crazy talented.
Same thing.
And no matter what your father tried to do, he didn't succeed. That's really the ultimate reality is that, racism tried to snatch my life away from me on many different occasions, both metaphorically and physically. And it didn't succeed. And so, it's not a burden that I carry with me. It's not something, I respond to incidents that happen to other people because I can empathize. but it didn't win. Ultimately, racism didn't win. And you and I are talking tonight, and that's another lost column for racism. Ebony and no, anyway.
What a dorky song, but yet so incredible.
Why not? Why not?
And boy, what a message.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, Joe. It's great to see you. I love you. I just, anyone that has not experienced your music needs to. Even the shitty old recordings on YouTube, they still are great. So go check out Joe Chinnici. I think that's the name of your channel too, right? Just plain old Joe Chinnici. Yeah. And I'll put the links to everything in the description so people will be able to find you. And hey, I'm sure I'll see you on Facebook in the near future.
Thank you, man.
Right.
I really appreciate this.
Oh, my pleasure. Peace, love, and granola, everybody.